morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar about attack surface management. My name is Stan van Hoof. I'm a business development manager at Exclusive Networks. And today we're going to talk about attack surface management. And actually the first steps of attack surface management. The reason why we're doing this webinar today is that we've seen a lot of articles and posts on LinkedIn, etc., about attack surface management. And everybody's claiming to do it, while attack surface management is more like a strategy of different components, and that's why we're doing this. Okay, we're gonna do a deep dive in different components, and then we're gonna start with attack surface management at a basic beginning, which is discover your assets and prioritize your risk. So this is our episode 3 of our webinar series about Axonius. The first one was about NIS2, and the second one was about agent coverage. We have all those recordings on our YouTube channel, so make sure to check it out because they were very good, of course. And let's talk about our agenda for today. First of all, we're going to talk about, of course, attack surface management. So the idea is that we're not just going to blast you away with vendor slides, but also that you can learn something about attack surface management, but also how Axonius fits in that part. And at a certain point, I'm going to be done talking, and Cedric is going to take over, and he's going to talk about really how fast he can deploy Axonius, and then all different adapters that we did to connect to get all the information. It's over 600 adapters, a lot of different log sources we're going to use, like your EDR, firewall, etc. Okay, so attack surface management. What is it? Well, it's a continuous discovering of all your assets, if your entire enterprise assets, but monitoring them also, and then doing an evaluation, learn something about it, that you have an idea, okay, this is my whole attack surface for my organization. So you have a big overview or a better picture of one single pane of glass. That's the idea. Why are you doing this? Well, your attack surface changes all the time. You've got your on-prem, which is more or less stable, but also maybe cloud. So the hybrid environment increases your attack surface a lot because you have no idea what developers are spinning up. You have different applications, websites, whatever. It's an ever-changing world. And how are you going to do that? Well, attack surface management, like I said before, it's a strategy. It's not just one single solution, it's a combination. We're going to talk about CASM, so cyber assets attack surface management, but also internal attack surface management and breach and attack simulation. So a lot of abbreviations because it's a lot of fancy words, otherwise we're going to lose a lot of time with it. So attack surface management. I stole this picture from IBM because it's a good overview. First of all, if you want to do attack surface management, you need to know your attack surface. So that's the discovering part, discovery and monitoring. Second part is, okay, now you know all your assets, how you're gonna identify risks. So all the security gaps and prioritizing is key in this scenario. If you already have that in place, very good. Next step is, okay, let's test all those security controls. Okay, for example, the breach and attack simulation, we can do that, test your security controls. It could be a pen test or whatever. And then finally, you're gonna make plans to make sure that if you have a breach, if there's something wrong, you know how to respond on it very fast to make sure you don't lose critical time at that point. All right. So the first part, cyber assets attack surface management. This is also the part that Axonius does very well. It's actually, you're gonna focus on really one unified view. What I mean is that of all your cyber assets in a single pane of glass, and this is key in the start of your journey of attack surface management, because if you don't have the relevant data and you don't know the real picture, you have no idea what to see next as prioritizing your risk or do the assessment on, because you're going to do an assessment on what you know, and this is very important because if you don't see what you have, you cannot protect it. So that's key on the why we're doing this. And how we're doing it, well, a good CASM solution has connections to everything else you already have in your environment. So adapters, preferably API connectors. In that way, we have bi-directional communication. And then we're going to trigger or we're going to work together with your existing data sources in your environment. Another part of attack surface management is the external attack surface management. And that could be different part of things, right? Most obvious is your external facing assets. So you can see, okay, I've got websites, are they vulnerable or not, with all the domains that they are linked to it. But also is my company at risk because maybe they are credentials on the dark web or whatever. So it's a combination of different services. It could be technology, with browsing every external facing asset and testing it, like automated pen tested or check out, are there maybe vulnerable parts in here? A site like Show Them, it's a service they provide. They will just easy scan the entire web. You can give in IP addresses or domain names, and in that way you can see maybe there are open ports or certain vulnerable applications that are still out there. So it's a combination of technology, but also services and browsing the dark web for your credentials maybe, because a lot of attacks nowadays are in different stages. You get specific groups who are specified in getting credentials and by phishing, but they're not that good maybe in initial access or lateral movement or etc. So your credentials will be at some point out there in the open, and they'll be able to, they're going to look for buyers. So if you have a service that looks for buyers or for that data, they can help you with that. And then the last part, okay, so you identified your risk internally, externally, is okay, now let's test that security stack. So with breach and attack simulation, we are actually going to use tools to have a deep understanding of about your entire security stack. How efficient and effective is everything configured? Is your vendor still living up to its promises? Is everything configured well? Is there maybe drift configuration? So in that way, you have your products installed and you know for sure they're actually working. And it could be combined with should be combined with a pen test, maybe a red team. And how you're going to do it? Well, it's a tool. It can place different nodes in your network or your endpoints or your mail security, which will do all the testing of the different security tools and will report to a brain. Okay, that brain will be able to launch those attacks. Will be able to look at how does your EDR response or your email security response. So in that way, again, in the two-way combination you're going to get. So what I'm now going to talk about, what part does Axonius covers? Well, and that's actually the first two. So Discover and Monitor, of course, it's a cyber asset security management tool. So in that way, they'll be able to check the entire single pane. In the entire single pane of view, you'll have a list of all your assets and the real assets all correlated. But then again, also the possibility to identify security risks. Right? It's maybe an agent running on a lower version or just no version at all because there's no agent installed. So really getting to identify security risk, but also prioritize. And Cedric will now move on because he's going to show you how easy it was to actually install everything, because in less than an hour, he installed Axonius, including more than 5 adapters. And in that way, you have a continuous overview of all your assets and detect those security gaps that I mentioned before. So, all right, this was my part, and now Cedric will take over.
Thank you very much, Stan. So the first thing I would like to share with you is how to deploy Axonius. And we have a couple of options. The first one is called the customer hosted option, where you will deploy your own custom virtual machine, either on-prem or in the cloud. Public and private cloud are, of course, supported. The other option is called Axonius hosted, where Axonius will host the appliance in an AWS EC2 instance, so you will be able to access your management platform through a SaaS application. Let's talk a bit more about that customer hosted deployment option. So you will deploy your own VM, so you need to install that appliance, of course, and you do that by downloading an OVA file that you will receive from Axonius, and you can use that file to create your appliance. Then you will need to activate your appliance, and to do so, you need to upload a license key. And once you have done that, you will be able to create a user and log into Axonius and finally get started. And as we saw in our previous sessions, the goal is to first configure your adapters, then create queries to uncover security gaps and use those queries inside dashboards and reports, or to take some actions through the enforcement set. Here we can see that license keys. So the license key is a file that you will receive from Axonius as well. And you need to upload that to make sure you activate your appliance. Then you create a user, and you can log in with those user credentials to your Axonius platform. When you log in for the first time, you have this nice Getting Started wizard that will pop up and walk you through the different features of Axonius. Let's talk about the adapters, but first let's talk about the infrastructure. Here we can see the infrastructure that is set up for today's webinar. So we have a couple of assets, both running on-prem and in the cloud. But today I want to focus on that Windows 10 client here that's running on-premise here on our Nutanix server. That Windows client is also a member of a Microsoft Active Directory domain. And today I want to show you how you can integrate Axonius with those different solutions. And I also added a couple of security solutions that we have in our vendor portfolio, such as SentinelOne, Palo Alto Networks, Fortinet products, etc. Please keep in mind that Axonius can integrate with 600 adapters, even more. So to integrate with your security, business, and management tools. And also keep in mind that Axonius can eventually ingest data from CSV and JSON as well. Okay, let's talk about the adapters. And the first adapter I would like to show you here is the integration with Microsoft Active Directory. I think we are all familiar with AD. By integrating with AD, we'll have some deep insights regarding to devices, but also regarding to our users. So the goal here is to be able to identify and manage Windows systems, but also identify outdated user information. What do we need to integrate with AD? Well, you have two options. You can either integrate over LDAP or LDAP-S. If you plan to use LDAP-S, LDAP over SSL, make sure that you have proper network connectivity and that port TCP 636 is available. If you plan to use LDAP, make sure that port 389 TCP and UDP is available. So what do we need? We need the domain controller IP address. It could be a read-only domain controller. Don't worry about that. And then you will need a username. Username with password, a user with simple, regular LDAP query rights. The next step will be to go to the Axonius platform, go to the adapters tab and search for the Microsoft Active Directory adapter and provide the information I showed you on the previous slide. Then at the bottom, you have a couple of options. So you can check for the network connectivity, you can save the adapter, or you can click Save and Fetch. If you click Save, you will need to wait the next discovery lifecycle of Axonius. That being said, by default, the discovery lifecycle is set to 12 hours. So every 12 hours, Axonius will start fetching information from your different adapters. So if you want to fetch information directly, click Save and Fetch. Here we can see that the Active Directory adapter is now properly configured. We have internet connection, we are connected, and Axonius will start fetching information from that solution. So if I go to the Device tab or to the User tab, you will see some information regarding to our assets. So please keep in mind, because we often talk about devices and assets, but Axonius will also provide you that information regarding to your users. And when we think about a user, we think about normal user accounts, but also administrator accounts and service accounts when we think about cloud environments, for instance. Okay, the next adapter I want to integrate here is an example of an EDR solution, SentinelOne. By integrating SentinelOne, you will have some detailed visibility on what's going on your endpoint, such as network information, but also a list of installed software and application. What's pretty nice here, if you integrate with SentinelOne, is that you have the option to directly fetch application CVEs from SentinelOne into Axonius. So the main benefit of integrating SentinelOne with Axonius is that once again, you will be able to manage and identify those unmanaged devices, but also identify devices that are not compliant or devices that have some vulnerable software. What do we need to integrate? Well, we integrate through API because the SentinelOne management platform is a SaaS application. And we integrate over API, which means that we need the domain name, the tenant name of SentinelOne, as well as an API token. To generate that API token, simply create a user with read-only permissions, go to the user profile and generate an API token under the user options. And then provide that API token to Axonius to establish the connection to your SentinelOne tenant. Here we can once again see that the adapter is properly configured. And then pretty nice, under the advanced setting near to the gear icon, we have a couple of additional settings that we could specify here. And one of them is called the ingestion rule. And that way you can specify how or what data Axonius should pull in from SentinelOne. So to give you an example, our domain from SentinelOne is actually used by a couple of SEs here at Exclusive. So instead of pulling all data from my SentinelOne tenant, I just want to pull data from a specific device group. That's done through an ingestion rule. The other option is under the advanced configuration, where you have this nice checkbox to enable the option to directly fetch application CVEs from SentinelOne. Okay, the third adapter I would like to share with you today is a built-in Axonius adapter called Network and Discovery Tool. This adapter gives you the ability to perform an active network scan. So you will be able to ping all devices in a particular subnet, as well as to perform port scan. Keep in mind, this is an active scan, so you need to have the proper permissions to do that, because otherwise it is considered illegal. That being said, what's the advantage of integrating or enabling this adapter? Well, once again, you will be able to identify unmanaged devices, but also able to identify open ports as well as their common use. How do you enable the adapter? Pretty simple. You go to adapters in Axonius, you search for Axonius network discovery, and then you specify what subnet should be scanned. In my case, I specified the local subnet only, but of course you can add additional networks that should be scanned, as well as how many ports that should be scanned, either 100 or 1,000 ports. The fourth adapter I would like to integrate here is an example of next generation firewall solution. So we have a whole bunch. We have Palo Alto Networks products, Fortinet, and others. Today I want to show you how to integrate with Palo Alto Networks. And in fact, we cannot directly integrate with one next generation firewall, and I hope that makes sense. Instead, you will integrate what's called Panorama. And Panorama is the centralized management appliance of Palo Alto Networks. So it will centrally manage the next generation firewalls, but also the ability to ingest logs from those firewalls, which means that if I can integrate Axonius with Panorama, I have this nice insights on what's going on my network. So you will be able to detect not only device information, but also network information, some detailed insights regarding to the interfaces being used. What do we need to integrate? Well, once again, we'll integrate through API, more specifically an XML API. So we need to make sure that we have the IP address of our appliance as well as an API token or an API key. First thing that you should do is make sure that the API key has proper permissions. So in our case, read-only permissions for operational requests. Then you create an administrator with those permissions, and you use those credentials to actually create an API or generate an API key. And that's done with the first command here on the slide, using the credentials of our adapter, administrator, sorry. And then at the bottom of the slide, you find the response of that request, which will contain your API key that you will need to actually integrate with your Panorama appliance. Okay, let's try to summarize what we have seen so far. So we have one Windows 10 client as well as a domain controller that now has been identified by the different solutions we have. And if we click on that Windows 10 device profile, you can see the different adapters that we're able to find information regarding to that device. Under Axonius Network Discovery tool, we'll find a whole bunch of information regarding to the network, as well as a list of open ports. Under the Microsoft Active Directory adapter, you find a whole bunch of information regarding to the Windows operating system, as well as some more specific information regarding to Active Directory, such as group and OU membership information. Then under Sentinel-1, a whole bunch of detailed information, as well as a list of application and software installed on that device. And then, of course, the strength of Axonius is to actually aggregate and correlate all that information together and show you that into the aggregated tab. So here we have a nice overview of all the information about that endpoint, open ports, network interfaces, applications installed. And that's key. If you know what applications are installed, what software is running on your endpoint, you will be able to identify vulnerable software. The last adapter I would like to integrate today is an example of a cloud service provider. So today I want to integrate with Google Cloud Platform, GCP. GCP is a suite of cloud computing services, and it gives you the ability to easily spin up what we call workloads. Workloads are all kinds of devices that we can spin up in the cloud, such as a virtual machine or a container. By integrating with your cloud environment, you will have insights on those different workloads, but important, you will also be able to identify users, normal users, admin accounts, but also service accounts. And that's tremendously important. That being said, what do you need to integrate with GCP? Well, we will integrate over API. And to actually able to access that API, we will need a service account. So to actually integrate with GCP, we will need to create a JSON keeper. And that's in fact a document that will contain all the information regarding to our service account. So the first step is to actually enable the APIs on our cloud environment. You can see that here. Next, we create a service account. we specify the right permissions to that service account. So once again, read-only permissions. And then we use that service account to generate a JSON key pair. And that's in fact a file that will be generated and downloaded automatically on your endpoint. And that file, you will need to upload that file into Axonius to make sure you have proper connectivity with your cloud environment, as we can see on this slide. So you upload that JSON key pair that contains all the information regarding to the service account. And as we will see after a couple of seconds, we are now connected to Google Cloud Platform, and we are able to start fetching data from that adapter. That means that if I go to the dashboard tab, you will see the adapter, of course, online and showing up. And if later on I want to know some more information regarding to devices or users, I would be able to use the device and users tab to create some queries and uncover security gaps. You will see that here, I go to the device tab and I will create a simple query to actually look at all the workloads identified by my cloud environment. And you can see I have two of them. I have my Panorama appliance, but I also have a second virtual machine, which is in fact a Palo Alto next generation firewall running in the cloud. And once again, if I click that device profile, I will have a whole bunch of information. But this time I have some detailed information regarding to the network interfaces, both internal and external IP addresses, as well as a list of firewall rules. And this is pretty important because the firewall rules describes or allow and block traffic to your workloads in the cloud. So make sure that you have proper firewall rules. And if you don't, Axonius will give you the ability to have a nice single pane of glass with all that information. Another pretty cool thing here with Axonius to integrate with Google Cloud is that you will have that non-compliant syscontrol tab. So Axonius is able to get information from compliance in your cloud environment. And we can see in my example here that 6 controls didn't pass. And if I click on one of those controls, you will have some detailed information why that control didn't pass, as well as some remediation steps. And then the reason why I'm showing this today is because if you're familiar with the cloud, it's really easy with simple commands, less than 20 seconds to spin up some workloads, services, applications. And if you don't know what you are doing, and even if you know what you are doing, those services could be publicly available. Maybe you have a firewall rule that's too open and that's allow a lot of connections. Maybe you have a firewall rule that allows external remote connections to your workload. So we can see here with 2 simple commands, I now have Apache as well as an application running in a Docker container publicly available. So of course, this is maybe not something that you want. So by integrating your cloud environment and your on-prem solutions with Axonius, once again, we have that nice single pane of glass with always up-to-date information. Today, I wanted to show you an example of an application called Damn Vulnerable Web Application, which is an application for testing purpose to show you how easy it is for hackers and attackers to actually exploit known vulnerabilities. So with a simple command here, I'm able to actually exploit a command injection attack and get information from that host. So to summarize that, please do not forget that we have that asset inventory, always up-to-date asset inventory list, but also information regarding to users. So if we integrate with a cloud environment, we will have access to user information, administrator information, but also service accounts that are created in our environment. So once again, once the adapters are configured, you want to create queries, and the queries, you will use them to uncover security gaps. Next step is, of course, to use those queries into dashboards, reports, and take some actions based on what you see. So hopefully this gives you a nice overview of what's possible. In less than 1 hour, I was able to set up this entire environment. I was able to integrate with those different security solutions. And just to kind of finish this webinar with a small call to action, if you have any question, you want to learn more about what actions you can enforce using those adapters, please go to the Axonius documentation portal, very well documented. And talking about those enforcement actions, we saw that in a previous session as well. But we have a whole bunch of actions that we can enforce, and that you can see that here. So to give you a simple example of that regarding to what we saw today, I created a simple query to actually find all Windows systems that are not compliant because they are not running an endpoint detection response tool called Sentinel-1. So based on that query, I will be able to take a whole bunch of actions, such as sending an email or sending information to an external source such as syslog server, or I will be able to directly integrate with our solutions, such as Microsoft Active Directory, SentinelOne directly, Palo Alto Networks, etc.
All right, thank you, Cedric. I think this really shows you the power of indeed those API adapters. You have the bidirectional communication and also call to action in that case. What we really try to do is here today is explain, okay, attack service management as a strategy, not just a single solution. But before you're going to start that strategy, you need to know what you have as assets, both devices as users, on-prem, in a cloud, single pane of glass, and very easy to set up. I cannot emphasize this enough. This is just done in less than an hour. Okay, it's a demo environment, but the same for your environment, it's the same amount of work. Spin up the VM, could be local, could be in the cloud. And next, just like Cedric already showed, connecting adapters, it will populate and give you that overview in just 1 hour of work. Maybe if you want to connect more adapters, be my guest, but it's that easy. So if you want to do a proof of concepts and if you want to check out Axonius and see, okay, you guys are telling all these cool stories and then single pane of glass, is this true? Well, I would say test yourself. Please do contact us. If you want to do a test drive like a POC or whatever, or a more elaborated demo, don't hesitate to contact us. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions, we will be online for a few more minutes. But again, thank you for joining us, and until next time. All right, no questions. So thank you guys. Until next time. Bye.